for the last 30 years, there's been no legitimate or real legitimate way to restore your gun rights if you have an old federal conviction. But this has all changed within the last 24 hours. This is being recorded on August 18th. So August 17th, yesterday, the Department of Justice signed their final order implementing Federal Rule 925C, which will restore your gun rights in the federal court system. And this is basically groundbreaking, updated news. I talked about this last year, that when it was first talked about, but now it really is here, with some caveats, I guess, but it is here as of yesterday. So I'm putting this video out August 18th, 2026. Anyways, if you don't know me, my name is Darren Woodfork. I'm an attorney in Scottsdale, Arizona. And for the last 26 years, I've been restoring gun rights here on the state level. And then recently, I started sealing old criminal cases here and in the state level for Arizona. I also run a pretty big personal injury practice here also. But in 2022, or really January 2023, Arizona created a new law to seal old Arizona state cases. So then I started picking up these sealing cases and restoring gun rights cases as a supplement to my personal injury practice. But nevertheless, so now there's a federal system, a federal way to get your gun rights back, and I'll talk about that today. And basically, the first thing I'll say is basically who can apply. And these are all the people who you've been prohibited to buying a gun under, I think it's 922G in the federal system, a prohibited possessor. Things like, I guess, I don't know, if you're a convicted felon, or if you have misdemeanor cases that are domestic violence cases that prohibit you from purchasing a firearm in the federal system, those would all apply under this new method of getting your rights restored under the federal system. And so what's important about this, though, is that there's not going to be any type of supremacy clause here, in the sense that if you have a state case, the federal restoration, if you do it under this new 925C, it won't supersede the state issue. And so even if you have your rights restored in the federal system, if you have a state case, you'll still have to have your rights restored in the state case. And so that, keep that in mind. You would think that, like I said, the opposite was basically when you had your rights restored in the state level, it didn't apply to a federal restriction, but it doesn't work the other way, in that if you do get your rights restored in the federal system, it'll apply to the state system. But again, this is all coming out. This, again, just came out yesterday. There's about 144-page instructions on the procedure and things like that I'm going to be going over here in the next couple of days. But that's, it's brand new, and so nobody's really used it yet. And kind of going towards that, when it's going to be available to the public, they basically said it's going to be 30 days. Yesterday, they said August 17th, it was going to be 30 days from the day that the rule was published in the Federal Register. If you see on this channel somewhere, I talked about the Federal Register is kind of where I was always looking for the updates for this law. And so this rule is going to be posted there. It's not posted yet, I don't think, not today, but it should be in the next day or two. And so once it's published in the Federal Register, it'll be 30 days from that date that they will allow the first applicants to apply for the federal restoration. Then they said after 75 days after that, they're going to open it up to 5,000 applicants. And then after 120 days, they'll allow for 500 more. That's when the fee of $30 starts, the filing fee. And so that's kind of the timeline from where we're at here today in August of 2026. I assume after 120 days, it's going to be open to everybody, and then it's just a matter of just kind of getting in line to file the application. I do think, and I'm sure that you can do this without a lawyer. I'm sure I'm sure it's probably written somewhere in there that you can file this on your own. But I do think, like as always, whenever you're dealing with something in the judicial system or you're dealing with the court system or whatever, it'll be better to have a lawyer, especially in this, like on a practical, on like a practical situation. In here, when you file a motion to restore your federal rights, if you have it kind of like on a legal law firm letterhead, and you have all your letters to the Department of Justice on, by a lawyer and letterhead and all that stuff, it might get you to the, front of the line or get you ahead of the line and things like that. Just me knowing kind of like how courts anyway, how they look at pro per people and people who are filing these on their own, those are always pushed to the back. Judges hate it when people represent themselves. And so any type of pleadings or motions or applications, anything like that, if you do it on your own, it's not going to be a priority, at least in the courts, and at least with my last 26 years of practicing law, that's what it's been like. And I would assume it's going to be kind of like this in the DOJ. There's going to be a lot of like administrative work, and again, the people who are handling these things, when they see a lawyer's involved, they may take it more serious than if you do it on your own. So anyways, that's my pitch kind of for if you might need a lawyer in this new federal restoration process. Finally, or I should say next, it's not a form, from what I can understand. You're not basically just filling out a form and giving it to the Department of Justice and then getting all your gun rights back in the federal system. One thing that I forgot to mention earlier, this does apply to not even federal cases. It applies to misdemeanor cases such as domestic violence cases that prohibited you from getting getting your gun rights back or purchasing a gun in the federal system because of the domestic violence conviction. And so this will work also. It also works like for military discharge, things like that. I think it's mental health issues also that you can also apply for this federal thing also, even though it's not a federal case. They're misdemeanor cases, but they stop you from getting a gun in the federal system. So that's what I should have mentioned earlier when I talked about what cases this applies to. But now that I'll talk about, like I said, and now I'll talk about basically, again, kind of why you could probably do this on your own, but here's why you'd want a lawyer, I think, to handle this for you, because it's not a matter of just filing a application down with the Department of Justice. It's more of like a clemency hearing or a pardon hearing, or I'm sorry, not pardon, but a clemency hearing, or any type of major litigation or argument to the Department of Justice on why you should get your firearm rights back. From what I understand from the law so far, you're going to need to get 2 fingerprint cards from the FBI. You're going to have to get certified records from all the courts of all your cases. You're going to have to put together the pleading, or the old case pleading, the old case indictment, the old case pre-sentence report, the old case factual basis for the plea, any type of plea, the old case, the sentencing, what was done at sentencing, and then your probation discharge or your absolute discharge from prison. You're going to have to get all that stuff for your case and submit it to the Department of Justice. You're also going to have to get a background check for every state that you lived in for the last 25 years, or until you're 18, if it's less, 18 years old. And so it's very, very intensive and invasive, and they're going to look for a lot of documentation in order to accept it, in order to grant your rights back, your federal gun rights back. Also, they're going to want 3 character witnesses also. And these character witnesses can't be your family or friends. Can't be your family or anybody related by blood, I think. Again, I'll have to go through the details of who the character letters are. But these character letters are not just letters. They're going to have to be sworn affidavits and notarized, I would assume, and filed and submitted on behalf of all your other application with the to get your federal rights back. As you can see, it's going to be a lot. It's going to be very intensive. They're going to look at your criminal history, all your cases, all your touches with the criminal justice system. They're going to look at all your cases that weren't even filed, maybe cases that they were investigated but dropped. They're going to look at cases where you have it was filed, but the counts, you didn't plead to the counts. The counts were dismissed, under the plea, things like that. They're going to look at all those dismissed charges. They're going to look at any type of drug history that you have, any type of problems with drugs or alcohol, things like that. They're going to look at how long ago the old federal case was that's stopping you from getting your federal gun rights. And then they're going to look at any type of mental issues also, things like that. So they're looking at a lot of stuff before they grant your firearm rights back. Because basically, from what I can tell, and again, I'll find out the details of this in all the documents, but in all the rules, but they're looking at what's in like the public safety. They keep talking about what is, who's a danger to the public and what would be the danger of the public getting your rights, giving your gun rights back, things like that. That's all throughout this 925C motion, what the law enforcement is concerned about. And that was kind of like the back and forth when the law was being created. And so, or the rules being created, I should say. And finally, I'll talk about there's some people who are not going to qualify for this. Just like any type of second chance law, any type of restoration of rights, some people won't be able to under the law at all. And these are going to be people with violent cases, probably old murder cases, things like that. You won't be able to. It's basically saying there's a category of people who are permanently banned for getting their federal gun rights back. Then there's another category of people who are banned within the last 10 years. So basically you have to wait 10 years before you file this, 10 years after the conviction, or maybe it's even after the sentence was complete, in order to file this application to get your federal gun rights back. There's a class of cases like that. They said drug trafficking cases, some gun cases, things like that. Those are going to be presumptively 10 years you have to wait. And then there's going to be some that are 5 years that you have to wait. I assume those are going to be the lower level drug cases, maybe counterfeit cases, maybe fraud cases, stuff like that. Those you might have to wait 60 months before you file the motion. But anyways, there's 3 categories of people who are kind of where you fall on that, on whether or not you can get your rights back, filed in the federal system. So that's pretty much everything that I wanted to say today. Again, I don't know the details of everything. Now, one of the things that's also important is that I guess there's if you get denied, it's probably super hard to get a reconsideration or getting the DOJ to look at it again. So it's one of those things where, and I always say in all the other motions to restore rights, is that you want to do it right the first time, because even if they allow you a way to get a second look, they're always going to see that first determination of denial. So you always want to do it right the first time whenever you're asking for these second chance type remedies. But it under the law here, this new federal law, basically they're saying that if you are denied, you have a right to an appeal to the district court where the federal case came from. And so you can do it that way, which I think is kind of interesting and maybe ironic in that I talked about this video, and I'll put it up in the card once before, in that I thought that this whole 925C thing was kind of goofy in the sense that you're asking the Department of Justice to restore your rights, but you're not asking the federal judge who took your rights when they convicted you of the old case. Again, as a lawyer who's been doing these restoration cases for 26 years, I thought it was just crazy that you don't have to go to the sentencing judge to ask for your rights back. But that's the way it is. And like I said, if there's an appeal from the DOJ, if the DOJ says no in this new law, they say you have a right to appeal to the district court judge. And so that's kind of like, I guess, how they backdoored into there. But again, that's the other thing. Again, that's why you want to do it right, so you don't have to worry about it. So that's it. I mean, there's a lot more I could talk about this, and I'm sure I'll have a lot more to say about it. But I just wanted to get on here because this happened just yesterday. And you can probably Google it and find, the announcement. From Todd Blanche, I think his name is, the new AG, that he signed it yesterday. So this is real. A lot of people didn't think it was going to happen, including me, but it did. Which goes also, and I'm sure I'll talk about this later, but if you're interested in doing this, you probably want to do it, sooner rather than later, just because a new administration might come in what is that, 2028, I guess. And so if, another president comes in, another Congress, another House, whatever, they may put an end to all this, right then. Because again, this is all kind of political in a sense. It's the Department of Justice. It's not, and again, that's kind of the problem. Like I said, that's the problem with this whole thing, in that it's kind of like an administrative thing with DOJ. It's not, you're dealing with the federal courts, at least not being, like I said, unless there's an appeal. But nevertheless, if you're looking to do this, you might want to do this and not wait, a few years when there may be another president and another change to this, process. So anyways, my office, here, please check out my website, woodforklaw.com. That's WOODFORK.com. You'll see that I've been filing these motions for 26 years. And like I said, just a couple years ago, I feel like we're kind of right back to where I was 3 years ago when we had this brand new motion to seal law here in Arizona. And I was one of the first lawyers to start filing motions on behalf of my clients. And I'm glad I did, because, I helped a lot of clients get their old cases sealed here in Arizona. So I'll be doing the same thing here with these federal cases. And so, obviously, so none of it, like I said, it's going to be about 75 days, maybe 120 days before we can start filing these things. But I am in the process of taking clients on and taking information, so we can start kind of doing the paperwork, gathering the paperwork, so that we're ready to go when the public is, allowed to file the motions in the very beginning. So if you have any interest in this, please contact me at my email, which is Darren W. That's DERRONW@MSN.com. And then I'd be more than happy to work with you and kind of tell you the details and all that. Like I said, I'll be putting another video out here on some more details. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them please leave any questions in the comments. That'll help me know what kind of questions to answer as I go through this. Like I said, it's brand new and nobody knows the details of it. And so we're all kind of, seeing this for the first time. But anyways, thanks for watching. Again, please subscribe to the channel. I'll have more information on this new federal restoration law. I think it's exciting. I mean, it's surprising to me that there's so many people have old federal cases that are prohibiting them. And all, it's probably one of the more popular topics on this channel. You can probably see it here. But anyways, so that's it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you soon. Thanks.